A warm welcome to everyone to the anesthesia class. The topic that we are going to do today is your anesthesia machine part 2. And if you all remember, we have already covered the anesthesia machine part 1, in which we covered the high pressure system. In part 2, we'll be dealing with intermediate pressure and low pressure system. But before we start with intermediate and low pressure, if you all remember, I had told you that there are some parts of the cylinder which have to be memorized and revised again and again so that they become inculcated in your mind. So before we begin with the intermediate system, let's have a quick recap of those. So many cylinders. This orange is cyclopropane. And as I told you, cyclopropane is the only inhalational agent that is delivered in the form of cylinders. Yet, all other inhalational agents we get in the form of vaporizers. And second, black body with white shoulder, the most commonly used, your oxygen. This is cyclopropane. Do you all remember the pin index of cyclopropane? It is starting with 3, 6 because propane is 3 molecules. Coming to oxygen pin index 2 molecules, so 2, 4, 5. This is your 2, 5. Now, in certain areas, it has been seen that the air cylinders are grey body with white and black squared shoulders, or you can also have black body with black and white squared shoulders. This is your air with the pin index of 1, 5. Moving to blue. The blue one is, yes, blue is your nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide has 3, N2O, 3. In sense, the pin index is 3, 5. Moving to the brown one, the brown is helium. Yes, it is helium. The pin index of helium, I'm extremely sorry, even I don't remember the pin index of system because it is less than 80.5% and more than 84.5%. So let's revise it again. If helium is more than 80.5%, it is 4, 6. If it is less than 80.5%, it is 2, 4. A little tricky, but no choice. When we talk about carbon dioxide, of course, C is something that resembles 6 a lot. So carbon dioxide pin index can be remembered like 2, 6 or 1, 6 depending upon the concentration of CO2. Coming back, these are some cylinders. This one, the third one, which is blue body with blue and white squared shoulder. This is a mixture of nitrous and oxygen, which is your Antonox. And the pin index of Antonox is 7. Yes, this has a special pin index of 7. Good. And last but not the least is your heliox cylinder, which is brown body and which is black body with brown and white square shoulder. This is your heliox. So this is a quick recapitulation of your cylinders. One more thing you all have to remember is that this cylinder of oxygen has a capacity of 660 liter, which is the type E cylinder, which is the most commonly used cylinder on your anesthesia machine, and the pressure is 2200 to 2000 psi. And talking about the nitrous psi is 750 psig. And similarly goes the carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide also has a psig of 750 psig. And air has it similar to oxygen, 2000. In air also you can say 2000 psig. So this was a quick recap of your cylinders. Now moving forward to the pneumatic components. In the high pressure we had studied that we have cylinders. Then we have unidirectional check valves. We have Borden type of pressure gauges. And finally, the first stage pressure regulators. When coming to intermediate pressure, what all components make your intermediate pressure? The first is your pipelines. All the pipelines are in the intermediate pressure, which have a pressure of 45 to 55 psig. Just remember this. The high pressure was at around 2000 psig. The first stage pressure regulator reduced it to 45 to 55 psig, and further it will be reduced to 15 to 20 psig via your second stage pressure regulator, which is the pressure of your low pressure system. And in the newly came workstations, we have a third stage pressure regulator also, which converts this pressure to just 5 to 10 psig pressure, which is eventually delivered at your common gas outlet. So your intermediate pressure system consists of your pipelines, then something to see the pressure of those pipelines, which are your pipeline pressure gauges. It is similar to that of the cylinder gauge. Then you have your second stage oxygen pressure regulator, which reduces the pressure, working on the similar principle. Then most importantly, you have an oxygen flush valve. We'll come to oxygen flush valve independently, but please remember, oxygen flush valve is an emergency oxygen port which is directly connected to your common gas outlet. It does not include your low pressure, that is, the pressure that is delivered is the intermediate pressure at your common gas outlet itself if the oxygen flush is switched on. Other than that, we have two systems which are important because they prevent a delivery of hypoxic mixture to the patient, which includes your oxygen fail-safe valve, and second is your oxygen supply failure alarm. The valve is going to decrease the supply of nitrous, or it is going to completely stop the supply of nitrous oxide if the pressure of oxygen decreases to certain limits which have been standardized by the manufacturer of the machine. And same goes with the alarm. If the pressure of oxygen falls below 30 psig, the alarm is going to ring immediately. This alarm is also known by the name of Ritchie whistle, and it generally sounds at around 30 psig. And the same is for the fail-safe valve. If the oxygen pressure falls below 30 psig, the supply of nitrous oxide is abruptly stopped, such that to prevent any hypoxic mixture to reach the patient. So these were the components of the intermediate pressure system. Intermediate pressure system, these includes your pipelines at pressure of 45 to 60 psig. It includes your master switch. Master switch, I had told you in your previous class, this is the switch which is responsible for the switch on of your electrical as well as pneumatic component. And in the whole of the anesthesia machine, please remember, there is just one thing which does not require, and it is independent of your master switch, whether the master switch is on or off. It only requires that a supply of oxygen should be connected to your machine, and that's your oxygen flush. Your oxygen flush will be always activated, and it is independent of your master switch. This is a very important thing that you all have to remember, because it has been asked a multiple of time in the previous year's questions, that which component of your anesthesia machine is independent of the master switch, and which it belongs to which component, which pneumatic component, high pressure, intermediate pressure, or low pressure. That's your intermediate pressure oxygen flush. Then your intermediate pressure includes your pipeline inlet connections. your indicators, your pipeline itself, your gas power outlet. See, when we talk about the gas power outlet, they were present in the older boil separators. In the older machine, this power outlet was present in order to provide air to the jet ventilators or the ventilators which were connected independently over the boil separators. The boil separators per se has no ventilators in it. Okay. Sometimes we used to additionally add some ventilators to the machine which were connected to this gas power outlet. But now in the newer workstations, these are obsolete. Then you have your oxygen pressure failure devices. If your oxygen pressure fails, this whistle is going to ring. Then oxygen flush valve, your second stage pressure reducing valves, and lastly your flow control valves. These are your flow control valves. These are also included your intermediate pressure system. That's your intermediate pressure system starts from your pipeline till your flow control valves. I repeat, your intermediate pressure system starts from your pipeline to your flow control valves. Now coming one by one to them. First of all, your pipelines. See, when we talk about the pipelines, I just hope you all have visited your OT once or twice. The pipelines are connected to the walls. We have some pendants hanging, or we have some wall outlets in which the pipelines are connected. They are connected through certain connectors which you can see, which are known as the Schrader probes, like this. These are the connectors in pipelines, Schrader probe, which help the pipeline to be connected to your wall outlets. But even here, when the pipeline is connected to the wall outlet, we have a very important safety mechanism to ensure that right pipeline is connected to the right mount on the wall. And this system is known as the DISS system, that is your diameter index safety system, or NIST, non-interchangeable screw thread. These two systems are present on two places, one on your walls and other on your anesthesia machine also. Okay, so please remember these systems are present at two places. One, it's a pipeline, right? It will have an input, it will have an output. So where it is getting the input from the central supply, even there this safety mechanism of this is present, which will prevent the interchangeability of the pipelines. And similarly, this is also present on the anesthesia machine. And the part of the pipeline which is attached is the part which is known as the Schrader probe. Schrader probe, please don't confuse it with the DISS system. Schrader probe per se is not the DISS system. Coming to the pipelines, we have Schrader probes, and there we have the diameter index safety system to prevent interchangeability. Now all the pipelines, one more criteria of identification of the pipelines is the color coding. All the pipelines are color coded: black oxygen, blue nitrous, white air, and finally we have a yellow pipeline also, which is the vacuum pipeline for doing suctioning. This is your vacuum. These are the color codings of the pipeline. Now all your pipelines are specially made with the material which is a phosphorus containing alloy, a copper alloy, phosphorus containing copper alloy. If you remember only this, that it is made up of a copper alloy, it is more than enough. And every pipelines are connected to each other with the help of certain special fittings, which are also a silver solder alloy. All these are metals, some special metals which are so special that they are able to withstand at least 4 times the pressure which is recommended. Just imagine your pipelines are so strong that if the pipeline pressure suddenly increases to even 4 times, they are not going to burst. Okay, and the pipelines also, wherever the fittings are there, it also have washers or your neoprene seals or Botox seals which are yes, very susceptible to leakages. So one of the main questions which were asked in previous year questions were, most commonly reported malfunction in the pipeline is the inadequate pressure being delivered. The most common malfunction in pipeline is inadequate pressure, because the option that are given, it includes like leakage also, but no, the answer is inadequate pressure. Talking about the preference, I think we have already covered in the last class about the preference. A quick recap of what preference means. That suppose the pipelines and cylinders both are attached to your anesthesia machine, but what your anesthesia machine is going to use is the pipeline oxygen and not your cylinders. Your cylinders are your reserves that are present on the anesthesia machine, and we have to be careful that the pipeline pressures are generally always more than the cylinder pressures, so that by any chance also, if the cylinders are left open, then also preferably your pipelines are going to get used and your cylinders are not. But in case something happens that your cylinder pressures are more, then maybe your cylinder gets used and you don't even realize it, yet that your cylinders, which were your backups, your reserves, are actually empty. And if by any chance the central supply goes, the pipeline oxygen goes, you have no cylinder because the cylinder has been utilized and you have not taken care of it. So by preference, pipelines are used in the anesthesia machine if connected over your type E cylinders. These are your wall outlets. The non-interchangeable screw threaded system, this is your NIST. Like this, it is connected to your wall outlets and to your anesthesia machine. These all are your shredder probes. Now I told you about the oxygen failure safety device in intermediate. That is, when the oxygen percentage is going to decrease below 20%, it is going to shut off the supply of nitrous oxide. This is the safety mechanism which the manufacturer has given, that the valve, the fail-safe valve which was I talking about, it is going to get interrupted and your supply of nitrous oxide is going to decrease. Similarly, if the oxygen pressure falls below 30 psig, within 5 seconds of time, an alarm is going to start, and that alarm was named as Ritchie whistle. And these are those alarms, safety alarms, which cannot be stopped. You cannot dismiss the alarm until and unless you increase the flow of the oxygen and the percentage, that the minimum percentage which is required on the basis of the standardization of the anesthesia machine is being delivered. That is 30 psig, your alarm is going to start within 5 seconds. Okay, and the valve is going to interrupt the supply of your nitrous oxide if the percentage of oxygen is going to fall below 20%. See, whatever happens in the anesthesia machine between nitrous and oxygen is more or less like one of those mechanisms which you can remember, like master-slave mechanism. That is, your master is oxygen, your slave is nitrous, and they both are going to decrease proportionately to each other. They both are going to increase proportionately to each other. We have a standardized percentage of oxygen, that is a minimum of say 30 or 33% has to be delivered to the patient. Rest 70% is your nitrous oxide. But if this percentage changes to 90-10 or 80-20, then nitrous oxide supply is going to stop. So this is the mechanism between all these failure safety devices. We are going to come to similar failure safety devices in your low pressure system also. But if we say in general, then in general all these safety mechanisms are based on this very concept only, that oxygen and nitrous, they have to decrease proportionately to each other, such that a minimum mandatory oxygen percentage of 20% is being delivered to the patient. I hope it is clear. Talking about oxygen flush, please see what an oxygen flush look like, because this image can always come for identification. This oval shaped button you can see, this is oxygen flush. It always have O2 positive written on it, and if you see it carefully, it has a protective rim around it, so that accidentally you are not pushing it again and again. And secondly, it is a little depressed. That is, you can push it only when you want to push it. Accidental pushing of it has been made a bit difficult because it has a inward. It is a bit inwards towards the machine and not outwards like your flow control valves. Now, talking about oxygen flush, sometimes what kind of question comes about oxygen flushes, like a case scenario. For example, I told you that oxygen flush is an emergency delivery of oxygen of intermediate pressure. For example, there was a 25-year-old man who was undergoing some airway surgery, and during extubation, suddenly the patient developed laryngospasm. Okay, so the first thing that we do in order to break this laryngospasm is to give positive pressure ventilation to the patient. We give a lot of oxygen to the patient, and that time, what are we going to use? We are going to use your oxygen flush. And then, what is true about this oxygen flush? For example, does it belong to high pressure system? What is the rate of flow of oxygen it gives? Then what are the disadvantages of the oxygen flush? So this kind of scenario comes whose answer is oxygen flush, and maybe the option that are given are a further extension of your previous answer of oxygen flush. So just remember that the flow that the oxygen flush gives, it's quite high, 35 to 75 liters per minute. It is independent of master switch. I've already told you. It's an intermediate pressure system. An oxygen flush activation has to be such that it is not going to affect your low pressure system. That the vaporizers, whatever they are delivering, it is not going to change beyond your 20%, or it is going to forego all your low pressure system, as your oxygen flush is directly related to your common gas outlet. By standardization, activation of oxygen flush should not increase or decrease the vapor pressure at the pressure of the vaporizer at the common gas outlet more than 20%. Okay, and the disadvantages, quite well understood. You are giving something of such high flow and pressure, it can lead to barotrauma. More than that, it can lead to dilution of your anesthetic gases at the common gas outlet, leading to the problem of awareness. It leads to dilution of the anesthetic gases because it's such a high flow of oxygen that is coming, and your vaporizer, whatever it is delivering, it is not changing because of this oxygen flush. Of course, it will get diluted, and because your anesthetic agents are diluted, so the patients become more prone to awareness. So this was all about oxygen flush. Moving to certain standardization, which you all have to remember. The first, which is these are the questions which are clear-cut answers. Okay, they are very straightforward and hence very highly scoring. That is why you have to remember certain values and certain numericals for getting a high score and edge above all the others. So the maximum allowable leakage. What is the maximal allowable leakage when we talk about your intermediate pressure system? It has to be not more than 25 ml per minute. This is the maximum leakage that is allowed. But when we include your hanger yokes and your pressure regulators, which change your high to intermediate, then the standard is not more than 150 ml per minute. If we talk about only the intermediate pressure system, your leakage can be only 25 ml per minute. But in case we include some part of your high pressure system also, you can have it till 150 ml per minute. The last part of the the intermediate pressure system were your flow control knobs. See, where do you find these flow control knobs? These flow control knobs are generally present here, just upstream of your flow meters. I hope you know what is upstream and downstream. See, downstream is towards the patient and upstream is just opposite to that. Everything, your common gas outlet goes towards the patient. So this all is downstream and above this is upstream. Towards the patient is down and above that it is upstream. Okay. So these are your flow control valves. What is the use of these flow control valves? Quite easy. It is used to, yes, it is used to control the flow of your gases that are being delivered to your patient. It controls the manual control of the flow rate. It can be adjusted with the help of flow control valve. Now this flow control valve is the most common point of gas leak. Please note it, in the anesthesia machine, the most common area which leads to gas leak is your flow control valves. Now these flow control valves have a lot of safety systems in it such that accidentally you are not going to give only nitrous oxide to the patient and no oxygen is being given to the patient. For that, the manufacturers have standardized certain rules for making this flow control knobs. For example, like you can see, the first, this oxygen, in many machines, the shape of this oxygen flow control valve is octagonal in shape as compared to circular, that is nitrous oxide. Second, it is very well written on it, oxygen and nitrous, and whatever it is written, that glows in the dark also. It is radiofluorescent. Your flow meters, your flow control knobs are being developed such that even if the light goes off, even then they will, yes, even then they will light up because of the radiofluorescence material which are being used in order to prepare them or to make them. Then as you can see, these flow control knobs are fluted. These are fluted. These are serrations. You can touch and tell that this is oxygen. Okay. The name is written. The shape is different. Then you have flutes on the oxygen. You can see, you can touch and feel that yes, this is oxygen. An oxygen knob is always 2 millimeters beyond the nitrous oxide. It is always ahead of the nitrous oxide by 2 mm. And the minimum distance between them is 20 mm. At least this distance has to be maintained between the various flow control knobs. This is your safety system of flow control knobs in order to prevent that no hypoxic mixture should reach the patients. Now, the third pipeline that we had was vacuum. Remember the yellow pipeline that we were talking about. Other than your oxygen, nitrous and air, you have a yellow pipeline also. If you visit the OT, you'll be very well clear about the yellow pipelines. In the yellow pipelines, we only have to remember two things. One, there is a negative pressure. It's a vacuum of minus 400 mmHg. Generally, what is asked is image-based question, that a yellow pipeline will be given and you have to tell what this yellow pipeline actually is for. It is for your vacuum, for suctioning of your blood, your airway secretions, etc. And the pressure that it generates is minus 400 mm of Hg. This is the pressure it is going to generate, and this can accommodate an airflow that is coming up to 40 liters per minute. This is of course an edge wala question, but what you have to remember is yellow stands for vacuum and the negative pressure it generates is of the range of minus 400 mm Hg. Now coming over to your low pressure system, we have to go back to the very first slide we were talking, the low pressure system. The low pressure system starts from your flow meters. This is your flow meters. And then to your back bar. This is the back bar on which your vaporizers are mounted. This is the place where your vaporizers are mounted. This is the back bar, or it's also known as Selectotech bar. And after that, we have a unidirectional check valve. And finally, we have a common gas outlet. In this also, we have one important part, that is the pressure relief valve is also present in the low pressure system, pressure relief valve. And of course, we have hypoxic guards which are part of your low pressure system. This is your low pressure system. Now talking one by one of your low pressure system. Your low pressure systems consist of your flow meters, your hypoxia prevention safety devices, your unidirectional valves, pressure relief or pop-off valve, the common gas outlet which is 15 millimeters, and then your vaporizers and your mounting device, that is your tech bar. Talking about your flow meters first, as you can see, we have oxygen, nitrous and air flow meters. When we talk about the flow meters, now they can be of two types. One flow meter that you will find are just a single tube in which only a single tube is present, and this single tube is tapered. See, even these are tapered. All the tubes are tapered, but these are dual tubes. The dual tubes mean that if you see the scale in the tube, the very first tube is meant for low flows. This is delivering only your low flow. Whereas the second tube, it is for high flows. This delivers your high flow. Whereas if you have a single tube, the lower part of the tube is for low flow and the higher part is for high flow. So these are two kind of tubes that are present, and all the tubes are tapered in the sense that they are thin as we go down and they become thick. The area becomes thick as it goes up. I'm extremely sorry for the bad drawing, but all the tubes are tapered. You have to remember that. Now coming over to your flow meters. Flow meters, and yes, they are very important because a lot of questions out of the flow meters have been asked. So let's learn flow meters step by step. By step, I mean first we'll learn of what these flow meters are actually made up of. See, these flow meters are made up of a special glass which is known as the Pyrex glass. They are made up of Pyrex glass, and these tubes which are present, which are made up of Pyrex glass, are known as Thorpe's tubes. What are they known as? Thorpe's tubes. And these tubes have a special anti-frictional coating over them, and that coating is of crozectin. This is the coating which is present on the inner side of the tube in order to decrease the friction between this floating bobbin and your tube, such that the bobbin can float smoothly and without friction in the Thorpe's tube. These are made up of Pyrex glass and they have an anti-static coating in the inner side of those tubes. Now, if you see the tube, it is tapered, thin. The area is variable. The principle is that they are based on variable area but constant pressure. The area is variable such that if you see the lower part of the tube, the area is less between this bobbin and your tube valve. But as you go up and up, the area between your tube and your bobbin is going to increase. That is variable orifice. Now, where does your bobbin actually stand, or where does it float? This is your bobbin. It is also known by the name of float. This is bobbin made up of aluminium, and it is also known as float. Now, when you talk about your bobbin, it can be of two types. It can be rotating bobbin, or it can be a non-rotating bobbin also. And generally your bobbins can be a spherical shape, or they are shaped like this. It can have such shapes, and they have flutes over it. And these flutes actually help in the movement of these bobbins. These are the bobbins, and if this is the tube, this is the air which is going from downwards. This air actually helps in movement of these bobbins using these flutes. I hope you can picturize it. There are flutes which are present on the upper rim of the bobbin. As soon as the air goes, it is going to move your bobbin. Now, where is this bobbin going to float is where the pressure is going to equilibrize, which is the pressure of the gravity is going to be equal to the pressure which we are giving of the gas from down. The place where these two pressures equilibrium is reached, it is that place where the bobbin is going to float. Now, how are you going to read this bobbin? I hope the part till here is clear. How are you going to read this bobbin? If you have a spherical shaped bobbin, then you have to have the reading which corresponds to the center of this bobbin, whatever the reading is come. But if you have bobbin of this shape, then the upper rim is taken. This rim, the upper rim is taken to tell the flow rate of the gas. This is how you read the bobbin. Now, what is the physics law? On what laws of physics will gas flow in these rotameters? When we talk about the low flows are dependent upon the viscosity of the gas. Viscosity of the gas. But the high flows are dependent upon the density of the gas. Okay, the low flows, which you can judge by the scale that is present on the glass, is dependent on viscosity, and thus it follows the Huygens-Poiseuille's law. This is the law that the low flow of gases is going to follow. But when we talk about high flow, which is dependent upon the density of the gas, then we are talking about the Graham's law. Your high flow is going to follow your Graham's law. This is something you all have to remember, that the low flow of the rotameters depends upon viscosity of the gas. Thus, Huygens-Poiseuille's law is applicable, whereas the high flow of the flowmeters is dependent upon the density of the gas, and thus Graham's law is applied. Now, if your flow is dependent upon the viscosity and the density, then one thing is but natural, that all flow meters are calibrated according to the gas they are going to carry. You cannot interchange the pipeline connections of the flow meters. Okay. That is, for example, and suppose your anesthesia machine is undergoing some service, and what the engineer does is it is going to connect the wrong pipeline with the wrong flow meter. Now, if you imagine, is it possible that if you switch on oxygen and suppose by mistake the engineer has connected nitrous oxide in that flow meter, will it flow? No. The safety mechanism has been developed such that the flow meter of oxygen is going to carry only the oxygen. Nitrous oxide, because of the change in the viscosity and the density of that gas, is not going to flow through that flow meter. Is that clear? I hope. That's the flow meters. Now, flow meters are arranged. I just showed you that flow meters are arranged. They all are arranged in series. Okay, they all are arranged in series with oxygen always downstream of others. I repeat, the oxygen is always downstream. Okay, if you have this like the common gas outlet, the nearest of the gas to the patient is always going to be oxygen, because if it is nitrous oxide or air, then the chances of hypoxic mixture to be delivered to the patient in case there is a leakage in any of these flow meters increases very much. I'll give you just one example. Let's see the A1. Okay, in the air, the nitrous oxide is downstream. This is the common gas outlet. Likewise, you can see there is a leak in the air, like leak in this flow meter. So whatever oxygen is going, it is now going to take two parts. One, the common pathway that it was going, and the second is the least resistant path. That's a tendency, right? So eventually what is being delivered to the patient would be less of oxygen and more of nitrous oxide. Thus hypoxic mixture will be delivered. Thus always oxygen has to be the first to be delivered to the patient. Always the flow meter is arranged in such that oxygen is downstream to all other gases. This is the assertion. The oxygen flow meter is kept nearest to common gas outlet. Done. The reason is the oxygen flow meter near the common gas outlet keeps its visibility best while you are working on the machine. Of course, right, the reason is also right, but the reason is not corresponding with your assertion. Both are true, but they are not related. The reason why oxygen flow meter is kept nearest to the CGO is in order to prevent the hypoxic mixture to being delivered to the patient. Moving, we have an auxiliary oxygen flow meter also, which is the part of your low pressure system. This is an extra oxygen that is being delivered to the patient. This is how your auxiliary flow meter is going to look like. This is the auxiliary flow meter on your anesthesia machine. Please, if possible, once do visit your operation theaters and do request your anesthesiologist residents to please show you the machine once, and after you see the machine, just come back and have a quick revision of the session. You will be able to visualize each and every part more clearly. It is used to supply oxygen to the patient without turning on the anesthesia machine. Even this can deliver oxygen without turning on the anesthesia machine, but the flow rate that it can give is only 10 liter per minute. And all anesthesia machines may or may not have it. This is the auxiliary flow meter. It has its own flow control valve, its own outlet, its own flow indicator. It is generally given to give supplementary oxygen to the patient during regional anesthesia or regional anesthesia or IV sedation anesthesia, that is monitored anesthesia care. Coming to a very important topic of hypoxia prevention devices. In very briefly, I'm going to tell you about the hypoxia prevention devices. See, one line that you all have to remember is that when we talk about hypoxia prevention devices now, it is now manufacturer dependent. Every company has developed its own hypoxia prevention devices. Be it Drager, be it Omida, everyone has their own hypoxia prevention devices. So I am going to tell you only the principle behind these devices. The first is mandatory minimum oxygen flow. As soon as you switch on the machine, a 250 ml per minute of oxygen is going to start. And whatever happens, you cannot decrease this oxygen if you are going to increase your nitrous. Okay, that is the minimum mandatory oxygen flow. It has to flow in the machine, irrespective of anything. 250 ml per minute is the mandatory oxygen flow. Done. Second, we have a sensitive oxygen ratio controller. Oxygen ratio controller. As I told you about the master-slave mechanism, it is similar to that. Oxygen ratio is getting controlled. You have to control the ratio between oxygen and nitrous. Nitrous is to oxygen is generally delivered in the ratio of 3 is to 1. You can have 3 parts of nitrous with 1 part of oxygen being delivered because the minimum required oxygen by us is 21%, or in certain manufacturers we have 30% also, or 33% also. Actually it is 33%. Okay. So this is the minimum amount of oxygen that we need, and if this ratio is like not 3 is to 1, it is 4 is to 1 or 5 is to 1, then the oxygen is going to, the nitrous supply is going to get interrupted. That is your sensitive oxygen ratio controller. Last we have a Link 25. These are actually a flow meters. This is nitrous oxide flow meter, as you can see. This is oxygen flow meter, as you can see. This is known as Link 25. This is a cog wheel. You all must be knowing what a cog wheel is, like your cycle. And this cog wheel is connected to the flow control valves, and it is proportionating device. Okay, this is a proportionating device. There are certain sprockets of 29 sprockets and 14 sprockets which are present here, and they both are going to increase and decrease proportionally, such that a minimum ratio of oxygen has to flow through the machine. These are the 3 hypoxia prevention devices principles. These are the principle based on which all the hypoxia prevention devices are being formed. Either a minimal amount 250 ml per minute of oxygen has to be delivered, or the oxygen ratio has to be around 21%. In Link 25 also, a minimum proportionately 33% of oxygen has to be delivered to the patient. Until unless these 3 things are not being justified, the nitrous oxide is never going to increase, or it will abruptly stop. I hope this is clear. Now coming to the last segments of the session, you have vaporizers. Generally, a lot of questions about vaporizers have not yet started to become. So we'll do only the basic of the vaporizers. See, vaporizers are made up of copper. In our newer machines, we generally have out of breathing circuits. If you go and see your anesthesia workstation, you'll be able to see that the vaporizers are sitting on a bar, and your breathing circuits are totally independent of it, because in older medieval period we had certain vaporizers which were present in the breathing circuits in itself. Vaporizers are basically meant to store your inhalational agents and then to deliver your inhalational agent in a very controlled manner. You have a lot of type of vaporizers which are being developed these days. The most important thing in vaporizer is the recognition of the vaporizer. These are your vaporizers. They all are color coded. Let's remember the colors. Purple is for isoflurane. Red, halothane. Your yellow, sevoflurane. And the most latest one, blue, desflurane. These are your vaporizers, and must to know the colors. I repeat once more, your purple is iso, the red is halo, blue is des, yellow is sevo. One of the case-based questions which were asked in past, I think, AIIMS exam was, for example, you were inducing a patient and you had opened your inhalational agent, you had given your induction agent, and suddenly you gave your skeletal muscle relaxant, that is your vecuronium, for intubating the patient. Suddenly the EtCO2 of the patient, it abruptly increased to very high levels. ठीक है. Abruptly, there was some arrhythmias in the patient. The patient had a very high grade fever, which was developed a little late. But there was an abrupt increase in the ETCO2 as soon as you switched on your vaporizer and you were giving your skeletal muscle relaxant. So, what is the very first step that you're going to do? The very first step is you have to stop all the halogenated agents that you have been giving, because you can suspect that a sudden increase, abrupt increase in ETCO2 to very high levels is suggestive of malignant hyperthermia. And the first very principle of malignant hyperthermia is to stop all the precipitating agents which can cause it. You have not given scolan. If you remember, there are two precipitating agents of your vaporizers. The first is your depolarizing agents like succinylcholine, and choline, and the second is your halogenated inhalational agents. So the first thing that you have to do is stop your vaporizers. Inhalation agents are volatile. How does vaporizer actually work? Suppose this is your vaporizer, this is your inhalational agent, this is your fresh gas flow that is coming. What happens is that your fresh gas flow, either it is of two types, it can flow through your inhalational agent, or it can bubble through, or it can just flow over your inhalational agent. Okay, these are some wicks which are present in order to increase the surface area. That's okay. The fresh gas flow comes. The liquid, of course, liquids always have a tendency to change into vapor. That will change into vapor because of the latent heat of vaporization, which always leads to cooling of the vaporizer also. So one thing I actually want to emphasize here, when I told you that vaporizers are made up of copper. Why they are made up of copper? Because copper has a very high specific heat and high latent heat of vaporization, and thus it helps to maintain the temperature of the vaporizer such that we have a steady supply of the vapors. So what will happen is, if the liquid is changing into vapors, sudden cooling of the liquid will be there, and eventually it is not going to change into vapor itself, or it is going to get cooled down a lot. That is why it is made up of copper, such that it has very good conductivity. It has a high specific heat, such that it can take the heat from the environment and help the liquid or the inhalational agent per se to maintain the temperature, such that we have a supply of vapors that is coming. So a set supply, we have a concentration dial here. You have a dial here on top of the vaporizer, such that if you set the dial at certain percentage, that is weight by volume percentage, that amount of vapor is going to get added to your fresh gas flow, and eventually that is going to reach the common gas outlet. This is the basic principle on which your vaporizers are based on. Liquids changing into changing into vapors, giving certain vapor pressure, losing the latent heat of vaporization made up of copper. Fresh gas flow is going to go, and the vapors are going to mix with the fresh gas flow, and eventually it is going to get delivered to your common gas outlets. Now pictures, these images are very, very important. These are the old vaporizers that we were using. This is the old one, that is your Trilene bottles. You had such bottles of Trilene, which is one of the inhalational agents. This is your Goldman vaporizer. And the most latest ones are these. I already showed you those vaporizers. Those are tech vaporizers. And the most latest one are these. Aladin cassettes. These are Aladin cassettes. I'll just show you the tech. These are your tech vaporizers. These all are tech. Tech 3, tech 2, 4, 5, 6, even tech 7 has been there. The most important of these tech is your tech 6, which is different from all the others, because tech 6 is specifically made for your desflurane. And the two properties of desflurane which because of which we had to make a very special vaporizer just for it were two. You just have to remember these two properties of desflurane. One, it has a very low boiling point. It boils very fast. If kept at room temperature, it is going to get boiled off because the boiling point of desflurane is just 23 degrees Celsius, plus the vapor pressure that it generates is very high. To forecome or to forego these two properties of desflurane, we have a special kind of vaporizer made for it, which was Tech 6. Okay, you all are actually you all are curious to know why desflurane, why this headache was taken for such a one of the inhalational agent like desflurane. We'll come to this when we'll talk about inhalational agents, but just a star question you can see for this very session is that desflurane is a gas which is known for a very quick onset and very quick recovery from the anesthesia. It is nowadays very much famous to be used for daycare surgeries. These are your vaporizers. Some characteristics of the vaporizers that we use are that they are temperature compensated. I told you they are made up of coppers, and plus they have a bimetallic strips also in this, which are temperature dependent, or they change the flow of the fresh gas flow and the vapors, how much the vapors are going to get delivered according to the temperature change. Then we have one thing that you all have to remember is, yes, the splitting ratio in the vaporizers. See, when we talk about the vaporizers, I told you there's a chamber where we have a liquid and where the vapors get formed, and these vapors are then added to your fresh gas flow. See, when the fresh gas comes through the inlet now, it has two channels. It has two ways in which it can go. One is it can go directly to the outlet, and the second is that it has to go through the vaporizer or the vaporizing chamber to the outlet, right? This is the concentration dial, and this is the splitting ratio, that how much of the gas is going to flow through the bypass chamber and upon the vaporizing chamber. How much fresh gas will be flowing through this bypass upon the vaporizing chamber, which can be changed by changing your concentration dial. Of course, if 1% is needed, then suppose you need in one case you had set the concentration dial to 5%, and in another case you had set the concentration dial to 1%. So the bypass or the splitting ratio is going to change. For 1% you have more gas which is flowing through the bypass, and for 5% you'll have less gas that is flowing through the bypass, right? So that is the splitting ratio, bypass chamber over your vaporizing chamber. I hope it is clear. Then I already told you that there are two ways in which the gas can flow through your vaporizer. One is just flowing over it, and other is to bubble through the inhalational agent itself. All vaporizers are agent specific. That's a safety mechanism. You cannot mix. You cannot put halothane into isoflurane. You cannot put CVO into isoflurane. They all are agent specific. They all have a special key filling system such that you cannot fill your vaporizer without using these special keys of filling. And the best parts of these key is that only a specific key is going to plug into your vaporizer. It's not possible that the key of sevoflurane is going to attach to the isoflurane vaporizer. They are very specific. Lastly, we have a select a tech bar. I told you about it is the bar on which your vaporizers are mounted, and it has a safety mechanism that you will not be able to open more than one vaporizer at one time, because as soon as one vaporizer, suppose these are two vaporizers now, one vaporizer gets switched on, it has a pin that comes out, and this is going to stop the movement of the second vaporizer. Then the concentration dial of the second vaporizer is never going to move only. That is your interlock. Okay. your selected tech bar has an interlock mechanism such that if one vaporizer is switched on, a pin is going to come out and it is going to stop the movement of the second concentration dial. And that is true even if you have three vaporizers, 1, 2, 3. If the third is switched on, 2 and 1 can never get switched on. Okay. As you had sequence of flow meters, even you have sequence of vaporizers. Just remember, lower boiling point agents are placed near the flow meters. If you have these flow meters, the vaporizers which have the lowest boiling point, they are near the rotameters. Low boiling points are near the rotameter and high boiling point are near the common gas outlet. These are high boiling point, high BP, low BP. Low BP, the low ones are near to your fresh gas flow. Of course, they need more of fresh gas flow. They have to be near the fresh gas flows, and your high blood pressures, sorry, your higher boiling point have to be uh, near your common gas outlet. This is in order to prevent condensation and thus the mixing of the inhalational agents with each other. Not going to so much of details, you only have to remember that when we talk about which vaporizer has to be just near the rotameter, out of the four, the vaporizer which is going to have the lowest boiling point is going to be just near to your flow meters. Okay, coming to one of the numericals that is asked in the vaporizers. If you all remember, we had done a similar type of numerical when we talking about the oxygen cylinder, in which we had your in which we were talking about the oxygen tank. How much the cylinder is going to deliver is dependent upon a tank factor, which was different for different kinds of cylinders. So tank factor into the pressure which is present in the cylinder over the flow meter that is being delivered on the cylinder. That was your oxygen cylinder, how much oxygen for how long it is going to deliver. The same is your vaporizers. In the vaporizers, how much ml of liquid oxygen per hour is it going to deliver? Okay, because this is very important for you, especially for long searches. If the surgery is going for 8 hours, you have to see that the amount of inhalational agent that you have put in the vaporizer is sufficient. How is that decided? For example, it is generally taken like 3. 3 is the constant for all the inhalational agents. 3 into your dial concentration that you have set. 5 you have set, 8 you have set, 3, 1, 2, whatever you have set. Suppose 3 is something that you have set into your fresh gas flow. Your fresh gas flow can be 4, 5 or whatever your fresh gas flow is. That will give you ml of liquid anesthetic that is needed per hour. Okay, this is like 3 into your dial concentration in percentage into your fresh gas flow in liter per minute, which will give you ml of liquid anesthetic per hour that will be used. This is just the revision of the tank factors that we had done before. Please remember this very numerical. ml of liquid anesthetic that is being used per hour, it is nothing but 3 into the dial concentration into your fresh gas flow in liters per minute. The very last thing, the scavenging system. See, these days scavenging system, why it has become important is it is still a potential question which I think can give you all an edge above all the others, because pollution, environmental pollution, occupational hazards have taken a new turn. It has become a very, very important part of this very era of our working. So you all have to remember, every anesthesia machine has a scavenging system which is used to collect all your waste anesthetic gases and to dispose them off. This is something I hope you all will remember. And by standards, when we talk about the time weighed, this TW is time weighed, because according to the norms, it is said that if an anesthetist is present in the OT, he has to be present only for 8 hours. Okay, keeping in consideration that the person is in the OT for 8 hours, the maximum allowable halogenated inhalational agents that can be present in the OT atmosphere or in the air are only 2 ppm. Okay, it is only 2 ppm of halogenated inhalational agent which have to be present in the air around the anesthesia provider or all the people who are in the operation theatre. That is why I hope that you all know that whenever there are long surgeries, now we have teams divided. Then talking about nitrous oxide, it is 25 ppm, which is the amount of nitrous oxide that is acceptable. But when you mix both of them, then it is decreases to only 0.5 ppm. I repeat, when we talk about the maximum concentration of parts per million of the halogenated inhalational agent, only 2 ppm. When we talk about the nitrous oxide, it is 25 ppm that is allowed. But when we talk about the combination of both of them, it is only 0.5 ppm that is allowed. These are the case scenarios which I've already told you, a little discussed about it also, about your oxygen flush, that a case can come in which the answer is that yes, oxygen flush has to be used in this patient. So out of them, which is the correct option for oxygen flush? Whether it delivers 35 to 75 liters, it is a part of intermediate pressure system, it's a part of low pressure system, it is independent of the master switch, it can cause barotrauma, etc. So you have to know about the oxygen flush. Then type E cylinder. For example, if the pipeline goes off, you are doing a case and the pipeline, the central supply shuts off, then how much is the volume of the cylinder or the oxygen that can be delivered to the patient? So I've already told you about the tank factor. Type E is the cylinder which is generally attached to the anesthesia machine. Done. And the tank factor, you know, of type E cylinder. So tank factor into the pressure of the type E cylinder, which per se is 2000 psi, but you can see that on the pressure gauges also, if practically you have to see it, upon how much oxygen flow has been opened. That is your type E cylinder, this much amount of oxygen it can deliver. Then malignant hyperthermia, I just told you about the case scenarios. Now overall, this was all about your anesthesia machine, but my personal advice to you all is just go through these 2 sessions once. Please visit your OT once. You will get a better outlook of your anesthesia machine and you'll be able to correlate the anesthesia machine much better once you have seen it. Then come back and revise these 2 sessions. It will be really helpful to you. And plus, any queries, anything are always welcome. And this is one of those topics which is highly scoring, straightforward, but yes, it requires a lot of revision and a lot of recaps again and again in order to memorize it. Thank you. Happy reading to all of you.